The Hidden Hindu, Book 2 of the trilogy by Akshat Gupta, Chapter 5, The Scion of Serpents. Part 1. At around 5 in the morning, Om heard a ruckus outside his hut and woke up with a jolt. He saw all the sages rushing towards something and spotted Vrishkapi and Milripa in the crowd. He put on his robe hastily and caught up with them. "Where is everyone running to?" he asked Milripa. "I'm not sure, but something terrible has happened." Om saw Milripa sweating despite the nip in the wind. He soon realized that they were headed to the southern edge of the mountain, where he could vaguely spot the backs of Ashwathama and Parashuma. The distant sound of waves grew louder with each step Om took. "What has happened? Where is this noise coming from?" Om asked as soon as he reached. Parashuma stood silent. It is evident in his eyes that even though he stood still, his thoughts were as turbulent as the harsh waves in front of them. Ashwathama spoke in his stead. "Someone has destroyed Mansavar." Milripa was perplexed. "Destroyed? What do you mean? Mansavar is not a pot of water. It is a water body with a surface area of like 400 square kilometers." No one responded. A crowd had gathered at the cliff by then, all the sages looking solemn and distressed. Everyone stood motionless as if observing silence for the death of a loved one. With sunrise drawing closer and the sky glowing brighter with each passing moment, everyone finally saw the catastrophe from the top of Kailash. An even bigger lake was now visible where Mansavar had once been. The lake that had originated from Brahma's conception was now consumed by the Ravana lake. "It is not about the size of the pot, but what is preserved within," Parashuma spoke. "The soul of the lake has been abducted. That is a body without a soul." "What is a body without a soul?" "It is no more a body. It is no more a water body. It is a dead body," he declared grimly and suddenly walked away. Om watched as Parashuma stumbled away on an unknown path. Who did this? What is happening? And where is Parashuma going at such a time? He was completely staggered by this disastrous development. Ashwathama's eyes were also fixed on the departing Parashuma. "He is going to bring the man who might have the answers to our questions. There is only one man, after Dhanvantari, who has all the answers. He has been in deep penance in a hidden cave in Amarnath for the past 5,400 years, and Parashuma is now going to wake him up." "Who?" asked Om, wondering. "What matters right now is your training. We'll be speeding that up," replied Ashwathama. Om had several questions looming in his consciousness, but before he could get entangled in that mesh, Vishkapi attacked him. Taken aback, Om tried to defend himself, but he was way off guard, wondering why Ashwathama was not helping him. He got back on his feet and saw that Ashwathama stood silently, waiting for the next move as Vishkapi charged at Om again. The sun was up, and Om realized that his training for the day had already begun without warning, and he was in the middle of a combat with the last of the surviving beings of Hanuman's clan, who was much stronger than a saber-tooth. Parashwarma stood on the shore of Mansavar. He found the empty oxygen cylinders, food packets, tent anchors, and other stuff like matchboxes, but no man in sight to claim them. While Parashwarma stood there, wondering who it could have been, Primula was leading the way to the west of Mansavar, holding another piece of the same torn map which Nagrenda had given him, and which highlighted their next destination. Nagrenda followed closely behind him, while LSD trailed behind both. While these two sides were playing their own roles, no one knew what Dr. Batra was busy with. This was less a statement and more an indication from Prithvi to Mrs. Batra, to narrate Dr. Batra's tale of progress and failure. After 2 more days, Dr. Batra went to check on the guinea pig again. It had been a week, and he was expecting to see Pooh completely recovered. But upon entering the lab, he found that it was lying unconscious under the table. He held it up to examine it, and it was clear that these weren't signs of recovery but of death. And then, right there, in Tej's hand, Pooh passed away. Dr. Butcher recounted. This can't be, Tej thought as his mind started racing. It was getting better. The symptoms were reduced. It had not been struggling in pain. His experiment had come to a close His experiment had come so close to finding a cure to save his wife, but was it all in vain? It couldn't be. He held Pooh's corpse in his hands. He was so devastated he broke down completely. Tej was a scientific man who had dedicated his whole life to the field of medicine and who had initially refused to believe Ohm's stories, but had put his faith in them nonetheless. He believed it all, only to lose at the end. He was angry with himself, angry at the circumstances, angry that he wouldn't be able to save me. Heavy sobs of fury and frustration ripped through him. He had truly hit the rock bottom. He returned upstairs to see me squirming in pain. The pain was impossible to bear despite the injections and painkillers, but the magnitude of Tej's pain was much greater than mine because he was experiencing the pain of helplessness. I could see it on his face. Tej, I can't take this any more. You must let me go, I muttered as he clutched my hand firmly. Tej couldn't contain his sorrow. Tears flooded from his eyes as he turned and left the room. He sat silently in the basement for a few minutes, composed himself, and rose resolutely. He opened the freezer where Ohm's blood sample had been stored. He took all of the remaining blood in a syringe, came to the bathroom, and pampered me as his lips curved into a wistful smile. Please, Tej, relieve me of this pain. Let me die, please. He took out 2 sleeping pills and brought a glass of water. He propped me up on the pillow carefully and handed them to me. As I gulped them down, Tej smiled through his tears and squeezed my hand. I lay down again and saw his figure fading. The last thing I remember is smiling feebly at him. I knew that Tej also couldn't bear to see me suffer any longer and that he was really releasing me. After I fell asleep, he injected me with Ohm's blood. The quantity was enough to at least give me a painless death as observed in the guinea pig, if nothing else. He sat by my side as I transcended into another world. By the beeping of the machines halted as the heart monitor flatlined. Tej, having stayed awake by my side for days, fell asleep out of exhaustion right beside me. Back in Prithvi's narrative, Parashuma was en route to the town of Pahalgam to visit the Hindu shrine of Amarnath, which was 683 kilometers to the northwest of Mansovar. Meanwhile, Nagarna went into hiding in the southwest, which his next destination 173 kilometers away. Now that we have acquired the first word successfully and Mansovar is destroyed forever, the journey to the extraction of the next word from here will be riskier, as they will be on alert now. We must be more cautious from now on, as they will already be on the prowl for us. If not, they will begin soon. Our next destination is close, said Nagrunda, and passed a slip to LSD. Shh. Gestured made was enough for Primo and LSD to understand that nothing should be enunciated aloud. The slip showed the attributes of a mysterious lake. The time isn't right yet. We have to reach this place on the night of the next crescent moon. We must remain out of sight till then, concluded Nagrindra. In the north, Parashuma had reached Amarnath. The Amarnath pilgrimage was open to devotees only between the months of May and August, because only during that period did the Shiva Linga made of ice appear in the cave. It was mid-February, so there was no one around, and the place was absolutely quiet. He entered and continued to tread past the main area till he reached the last accessible corner in the cave. The walls were bumpy with asymmetrical surfaces. In that corner was an inconspicuous bulge in the rocks. Parashuma felt the rough surface with his palms until he found a particular spot. He summoned his parashu, and the axe appeared and hammered the rock lightly with its butt. A few chunks fell out and revealed a closed eye. He started digging around it with his hand, clearing the rock until the meditating figure was revealed. It was the man he had come in search for, sitting in silence with his eyes closed. Over all the centuries he'd sat there with he had become a part of the cave, completely unified within nature. His body was mostly skeletal, his thin skin speckled with tiny insects and worms that lived there. His hair was caked with mud and dirt along the rest of his face. Parashurma awoke him from his deep trance, and the man opened his eyes. He looked at Parashurma and realized that it must be something urgent because Parashurma himself was standing in front of him. He silently waited for his visitor to speak. Mansavar has been defeated by Rakshastal. The soul of Mansavar is missing. We have also lost the books of Rich Sanjivani, said Parashurma. While Parashurma continued to brief the old man about the situation in Kailash, Nagrendra and his team arrived at the remote hotel where they checked into a small room to get some rest. While the others settled in, LSD researched the mystery lake. She learned that Rupkund was a high-altitude glacial lake surrounded by rock-strewn glaciers and snow-clad mountains, and was widely known for the hundreds of ancient human skeletons found at its edge, contributing to the lake being called Skeleton Lake in recent times. And these carcasses are still visible in the clear water of the Shallows Lake, but only for a month when the ice melts. Along with the discovery of skeletons, wooden artifacts, iron spearheads, leather slippers, and rings were also underneath. Radiocarbon dating had determined that the remains were from a distant point down south. All relics of South Asian ancestry were dated back to the Satya Yuga. The studies of the skeletons revealed a common cause of death, blunt force trauma to the back of the head. In a study published in August 2019, the examination of DNA extracted from 38 skeletons deduced the populations experienced mortal incidents at the lake aeons back. Just then, Nagrendra took out his worn-out metal bottle and drank from it. The faded color made it appear old, but the light dancing around its curved edges made it shine as good as new. He had been carrying that around in Mansavar with the other camping equipment, recalled LSD. I have to go back to my chamber in the submarine and deposit our extraction from Mansavar. I'll be back in a few days. Meanwhile, you both stay here and be vigilant. He stuffed his bottle back in his bag and left for the submarine. Vrishkapi continued striking Om while Ashwathama dispensed a series of instructions from afar on how to defend himself, but Om couldn't keep up and continued absorbing the brutal blows. A frustrated Ashwathama stopped Vrishkapi and marched towards Om. Why are you not following my instructions? Where is your concentration? We don't have time, Om. And I thought that we were the only handful of men who had time, Om groaned, panting for air. Om's smug response annoyed Ashwathama. You do not understand. You are right. So help me understand. Give me the answers. Tell me clearly what is going on. There are 100 questions hampering my attention. Questions more pressing than this illogical training Parashurma has asked you to put me through. Ashwathama signaled to Vrishkapi, leave. Vrishkapi bowed his head to Ashwathama, gave a friendly smile to Om, and left. Considering what Om was going through, Ashwathama calmed himself down and spoke politely. All right, come, sit. Tell me, what's bothering you? Om took a deep breath, apologizing to Ashwathama for his behavior, and sat beside him. Om opened with, What is going on here? Ashwathama gathered himself before answering and said, I don't know as much as Parashurma, but I do know that Rich Sanjivani was stolen from you, and it wasn't done for the process of immorality. What do you mean? The man who has the answers to many of your questions, if not all, must be on his way here with Parashurma. I promise that I will make sure you get all the answers that he has, but until then, my friend, please cooperate with me and please focus on your training. We are already running short of time, and every minute wasted can amount to the loss of uncountable lives as well as our defeat. Can we please start again? Om nodded quietly. Come with me. Ashwathama stood up and began to walk. Time crawled as LSD and Premal stayed cooped up in their small hotel room at a location midway between the two lakes of Mansavar and Rupkund. One morning, Premal clenched his fists and felt no pain, so he decided to uncover the bandage wrapped around his palm. LSD came close and noticed the scar left behind by the healed wound. The mark resembled an unusual iris with a vertically elongated pupil inside. She grasped his hand to take a better look, and peering at it from a different angle, she remarked, "You know, this is a mark on your hand that looks kind of like an eye deformity called coloboma. It's derived from a Greek word meaning defect. Medical literature typically describes it as a keyhole-shaped defect. It's rare and occurs in less than 1 in 10,000 births. Apart from humans, this abnormality is also found in cats, but for some snakes. It is a normal phenomenon. There is a specific breed called vine snakes. Vine snakes have this keyhole-shaped pupil that helps them focus and provides better binocular vision as compared to other snake species. They have enlarged grooved teeth at the back of their mouths, but they are not as poisonous as cobras, yet poisonous enough to subdue their prey." "How do you know all this?" Primo was amazed, listening to her talk about it in such detail. LSD was thrown off by his question. She fidgeted with her hands and looked away, and she replied, I was once supposed to prepare a project report on snakes in my childhood, although I personally don't like snakes. Coincidentally, this scar resembles the eyes of vine snakes, so I remembered." Primo could sense that she was hiding something. "You know, you can tell me why you are here. Why are you working for Negrenda? And why should I tell you that? Look, we are working towards Negrenda's goal together. We have slept with each other. No matter how awkward it was in the beginning, there's a good chance you may have conceived my child, which will belong to us equally. This association seems to have transformed into a lifelong relationship already. We have time to strengthen it. We have to learn to trust each other, and for that, we must know each other better," Primo responded. LSD remained mum. Primo sighed. "The only way to get her to open up would be to share my own story."